Good evening and welcome to Out of the Woods, brought to you by Future Generations University. I'm Heather Harper, Administrative Associate here at Future. Out of the Woods is a free monthly webinar series that covers a range of topics related to tree start production, marketing, and enterprise management. Just a couple things before we get started. We highly encourage you to ask any questions, and we save time at the end of the webinar for that. There's a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. You can type questions in there, and like I said, we'll address them at the end. There's also a chat box. If you have any technical issues throughout the webinar, please type those in there into that, and we'll do our best to fix those as we go. With that being said, we have had a little bit of Wi-Fi issue today due to the weather. So if we do go out, that's what's happened, and we'll do our best to get back up and running. So tonight's topic is small business partnerships and promotion, and we're very excited to have someone who knows quite a bit about that. She is the publisher and editor-in-chief of West Virginia Living magazine and the founder and owner of New South Media. Please welcome Nikki Bowman Mills.
Hi there. Thank you. Thanks. Hello, everybody. I'm hoping, full disclosure, I have a black lab sitting at my feet and she is snoring to high heaven right now. So if it gets too loud and distracting, please let me know. I keep kicking her and she just rolls over and starts snoring again. But before I start, one thing I wanted to do, and we were kind of having a little issue earlier. Let me see if you can hear this. Okay, good. Don't be distracting to me. So I wanted to start us off with something, a clip from one of my favorite movies here. So let's see if I can do this and get that right. So everybody, I hope, can see that. See my screen here? Okay. All right, let's see. We can play this.
Okay, that's our backstory. New Hampshire, we're venture capitalists. Sick of that. Let's be from Vermont, and let's have an emerging maple syrup conglomerate. Stupid, we don't know anything about maple syrup. I happen to know everything there is to know about maple syrup. I love maple syrup. I love maple syrup on pancakes. I love it on pizza. I like to take maple syrup and put a little bit in my hair when I've had a rough week. What do you think holds it up, Slick?
So, you know, I have a wedding magazine, so that's one of my favorite wedding movies of all time. So, you know, one of the things I wanted to talk about is not just partnerships, but also the importance of storytelling, because that's what we do. We are storytellers. And one of the things, as I'm seeing here, let's see. Yeah, there we go. One of the things we've been doing is publishing magazines for about 15 years. It'll be 15 years next year. So we've made it our business really to tell the state's story. And, you know, when someone picks up one of our magazines, which we have, West Virginia Living was our first magazine. We have West Virginia Weddings, our wedding issue. We have a Morgantown magazine. And then we also do wonderful West Virginia for the state. And when someone picks up any of our magazines, they hopefully will believe and see a beautiful, positive side of West Virginia. And we really, our mission is to change perceptions of the state. And we do that by helping build brands, build businesses, and in doing so, build a better state. We tell your story. And in addition to our publications, we have a custom content side to the company, and we do a lot of different things. We've got a lot of custom. So when I say custom content, we have a side to the company that we call Narrative by New South Media, and that is our storytelling arm that we do for other people. So we create some custom magazines, we do cookbooks, we've done, I mean, you name it, and it has to do with storytelling. We've done it, videos, blog posts. We have a bunch of different types of clients, from CVBs to individual businesses to tourism destinations. So and then down here on the left side, we have something called our West Virginia Loving Local box, which for those of you who follow the magazine know that when every issue launches, we put together a very limited supply of boxes that all of the things, or as many things as we can, that we featured in that issue, we include the products of that. And it's a great storytelling piece, and then people also get to experience the products. So one of the things that I was kind of thinking might be beneficial to you was, as thinking about being a producer, but also producers, you have your own brand and your own product. But being members of the Maple Syrup Association, you're telling a bunch of different types of stories. You've got your own brand, but then you're telling the story of the association. And while each of those stories, your individual stories, should be different, the association's brand and storytelling should be one that unifies everyone in the industry. And it helps you distinguish an industry that is both agriculture and tourism. So knowing how to tell your story isn't a blow by blow, a year by year, here's what we've done, here's who I am. You don't throw everything plus the kitchen sink in. It's one that's simplified. You need to clarify it. It's something that's easy to remember, because good stories, as we know, it cuts through the noise. They cut through the noise and distill content down that is relevant and educates and hopefully inspires action. I think really stories are an important part of our society because they define our values, our beliefs, and our dreams. And I think they really help us move forward, not just as a state, but as a country as well. But our stories that we tell in our publications like West Virginia Living and through all of our social media channels, our soon to be released podcasts, we create communities and partnerships, really important, deep, long lasting partnerships, because we champion folks like you, because you matter. Your stories matter, and that your stories are worthy of being told. I don't know how many people, this is kind of hot off the press, this issue. I wish I could see a show of hands of how many people have seen this, the most current issue, winter issue of West Virginia Living. But there's stories like this one, which is all about the tree syrup industry in West Virginia, with a lead story on walnuts, Gary Mongold's walnut farm there. One second, I am getting a glitch, and I don't know if it is I don't know if it's a internet issue. We've also had bad internet challenges here today because of the weather. So this story, I want to tell you a little bit about how it came to be. And it's kind of an interesting story, but it started many years ago. Well, maybe not many. What is it? Probably about 3, maybe 4 years ago. I met Luke, and I was working on a piece for the Benedum Foundation about the woodland economy. And so I'm talking to him, I'm interviewing him, and he starts telling me about all, what's going on and all these exciting things, and how West Virginia is like, it's really cool to be in West Virginia now. And I'm like, he's my people. This is awesome. And I felt very inspired about it, from his passion about what he was talking about. And so he told me about walnut syrup. And the whole time I'm like sitting there thinking, I'm wrinkling up my nose, and I'm like, really? Walnut syrup? Why in the world would you tap walnut trees? And he's telling the story, and then he says, well, it sells for $500 to $600 a gallon. I was like, say what? That's crazy. And then in the back of my head, I'm like, but it's gotta not, it's gonna taste bad, right? I'm not a black walnut fan. I've judged a lot of food competitions around the state, from Golden Delicious apples to you name it. One thing I will not do is judge the Black Walnut Festival, because I'm not a big, it's too bitter. I don't like black walnuts. So I was a little skeptical, because I thought, yeah, it can't really taste that good. And so he's telling me, no, it's pretty good. And then I end up talking to another person, Bill Woodrum, and he brings up walnut syrup. And he says, man, he goes, Nikki, you got to try it. It's amazing. So I was really, really curious. So I think it probably was about another year later, I get an email from Mark Bowers. I think it was in October of 2020. And Mark emails me and he says, hey, I just want to give you a heads up. There's a large black walnut operation going on in Grant County. And Mr. Gary Mongold should be in production pretty soon. And we're, I think he said, we're in the process of installing pipelines and tubing. And why don't you come and, check us out? And it probably would be a really good story. He said, I'm thinking he's going to have at least 800 taps. And there's a rumor that there's that, he may be the biggest in the state. And you should check us out. So I did. And it was incredible. It was a really great experience. And it all happened because of folks communicating with me far in advance, so we could plan around it. But I knew it just was a good story. It made a really good story. And I'll tell you why. And it was because of the passion that people approached me with about this. One, it was like they were excited about it. It made me excited about it. It's a product that not very many people knew about. I hadn't heard about it. He didn't just have 3 trees, he had 1,200. And I realized this is something that could be a differentiator for the state. Other tree syrups, it was kind of an interesting angle on the story. We had done a maple syrup story several years prior and featured a couple of other businesses there. And it's not really to say that it's not to say at all that maple isn't an important story-worthy story. It was just that walnut and these other syrups kind of could put a national spotlight on West Virginia that also elevated exposure to our wonderful maple syrups. And then once I met Gary, I realized, it is a really, really good story, because he was authentic and passionate about what he was doing. It was his family land. He was willing to take a risk. And I will never forget when he said to me, we were looking out on all of his trees, and he said, I'm a mechanic. He said, I don't have a 401k. He said, those trees are my retirement plan. And he said, they're my legacy. And it stuck with me. I will always think about it. And once I knew his story, I would buy products from him all day long. And I say that to everybody here, is that's why knowing your story and telling your authentic story is important, because people don't just buy a product. When they're buying a product, they're buying your story. And then that story becomes a part of their story. So the more that I really looked at what was happening in the state, let's see if we can get this to click over there. I realized, and I started looking into the association and what you're doing, I realized that the association is more than just being a resource for one another. Your association is really an important voice for promoting the product, all products, a voice for changing how West Virginians use, talk about, and buy syrup. Because you're the experts, right? You're really powerful together. And more so, when you can unite that voice and create this really big, powerful, inspiring story, you can move mountains with that. And you own it. You own that story. So, what I really hope that I can tell you is to tap into your passion. Not just, when you're telling the story, it's not just about, okay, this is how we tap trees, this is how we tap maple trees. It's the story of, why is this important? The story of how and should West Virginia, and how can West Virginia really embrace it? And as you all know, storytelling comes in many shapes and sizes. You've got print, you have photojournalism, video, podcasts, social media campaigns, the storytelling you do during tours, when you're giving a tour of your sugar house, or interviews, or you're talking or pitching a story to someone in the media like me. No matter what the format is, it needs to be kind of sticky and clicky, to what we say in the industry. Is it sticky and is it clicky? And as I'm looking at this spread that we did, what we really wanted to capture was some, on the left side, as you'll see in the Maple Me Crazy section, it's just products, all West Virginia made products that utilize maple syrup in some way, shape, or form. We've got Hall's chocolate, we have biscuits and we really covered the entire state. We've got biscuits, maple butter biscuits from Harper's Ferry, which are amazing. The granola, the Hall's maple truffles, you name it, it's there. And then on the other side, we really tried to show a sampling of different syrups around the state. And then we wanted to tell a little bit about the story of what are some of the other opportunities in West Virginia. And then we did a spread, and this, when I talk about story, our intent was not to be the Bible. It was to intrigue somebody enough to go find more information. So we wanted to make sure, to take the fear factor out for some folks, to inspire curiosity, to make people curious so that they could go get more information. So we had how to tap a tree, kind of a tapping to-do list. One of the things that really excites me is all of the beverages, the elixirs in our liquor cabinet that are using maple. There's so much possibilities there. And of course now Mark Bauer's maple farm, his maple sugar down at the bottom. So as we're going to get through what I'm going to hopefully kind of leave you with, there are some tips on when you think about telling your story, how should you do that, and how to do it creatively. And so I really wanted to share a couple of my favorite marketing videos. These are from Iceland, actually. And because they've really inspired me to think differently about how we tell stories. And it isn't a beginning and end type story that everybody wants to do. So my hope is, let's see here. Oh, wait, no. Let me go back here. Let's see this. Well, let me just tell you while we're on this slide. This was our, we couldn't tell everybody. We couldn't really fit everybody in the feature, but it was really important when we partnered with Future Generations to really showcase Maple Days, which was coming up, and to get ahead of it. And we tried to show folks that at the time when we went to press, these are people who had signed up and said that they would be participating in Maple Days. And then we did these itineraries, actually. So it covered, around the state, different counties. And as we were doing it, we were telling some of the producers' stories. What makes this place unique? Why do you want to go there? And while you're in this area, where do you eat and drink? Where else can you go? So we really tried to package itineraries to make it simple for people to enjoy Maple Days. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. And then the last part was also to try to encourage people to use maple syrup and other tree syrups in different ways, not just on your pancakes. So we call these elevated recipes. Thank you, Annie Humes, for this. Okay, now this is where I wanted to end up on our, Why won't it go back here? There we go. So I'm hoping you can hear this, and then we're going to talk about what lessons can we take from this.
This is the A tour of Iceland, so try to sing along. This is the A tour of Iceland, what could possibly go wrong? I start my day with coffee, or coffee's what we say. I pour a little milk in and feed my horse some hay. I look out the window to see if there is soul.
What is going on there? Let's try this again.
This is the A tour of Iceland, so try to sing along. This is the A tour of Iceland, what could possibly go wrong? I start my day with coffee, or coffee's what we say. I pour a little milk in and feed my horse some hay. I look out the window to see if there is soul. I eat my morgunmatur and sit down in my stól. This day is kind of awesome, no matter what you see. There's greater list than jöklar and vinir you can meet. So pack your töskur, Iceland has it all. Austur to vestur, just don't look for ends. This is the A tour of Iceland, so try to sing along. This is the A tour of Iceland, what could possibly go wrong? Often they are cozy, I'm klæðast all the way, but don't forget some skila before you go and play. Okay. You might see a torfbær or hiking in your garden, and you must say hi to Willi, because that is my dad. Pappi. And you can rent a bílaleigubíl. Enjoy the drive on Hringvegurinn. Be mindful of malarvegir. And don't talk on the moss, it grows back so slow. Like 70 years. This is the A tour of Iceland, so try to sing along. This is the A tour of Iceland, what could possibly go wrong? Since the year of old, the sheep has been around. Vinaleg and gracious, every man's best friend. We cuddle them and klappa and then take all their roots. We wear them like the kappa and they've always kept us full. This is the A tour of Iceland, so try to sing along. This is the A tour of Iceland, what could possibly go wrong? This is the A tour of Ísland, so reynda að syngja með. This is the A tour of Ísland, now memorize this lag. You just sang the hardest karaoke song in the world. You speak Icelandic. You can even say plokkfiskur. You're almost an Icelander. Or almost. Seriously, it's a lot of paperwork. Just come and visit.
So, in this video, I think about tourism videos and agricultural videos are often not very good. They often feel like they're propaganda. Come here, the sky is always blue, or come here and do A, B, C, D. And why I love that is that it's a storytelling marketing video that made me think, how do we tell our stories? How do we tell the story of tree syrups in West Virginia, of maple syrup, of walnut syrup, whatever, of pick something and turn it on its head instead of doing the standard, except the kind of the cliche way of talking about what we're doing. So that came about. Why it's interesting is Iceland was in a world of hurt, and it was launched by Inspired Iceland, and and they did it because they needed to grow their tourism industry, and the numbers are amazing. After they started this campaign, I have another one that I wanted to share, but what I love about it is it educates visitors about responsible tourism. I know I will never step on moss again without thinking it takes 70 years to grow. But think about it. Why is it such good storytelling? It isn't just that we have beautiful scenery and delicious food and volcanoes, because that's not good storytelling. We often think, saying, come visit us. As I said, we have A, B, C, D, and E. But that's not storytelling. That's list making. This video doesn't give you the history of Iceland. What it does really well is it utilizes kind of a time-tested formula for storytelling. And they did so in an out-of-the-box way using a karaoke song, which I love, and I can't sing. So that says something. And the structure, really of the story has variety, because no one wants lists. They say we have horses and we have great beer, but we don't have elves. We do have beautiful scenery, but don't walk on the moss. It takes 70 years to grow. It's educational, it's entertaining, and it's humorous. And one of the things that they had struggled with was what was considered to be a negative, which was the language. There was a perception issue in Iceland that no one would go because everyone struggled with their words. And so what they did in that video was teach that there were some words, and some of the words, but very in a subtle way that also lets you know that most of them speak English. So don't be intimidated to come. As I mentioned before, their economy was in the crapper when they started this campaign. And they started it with a national call, what they called a national call for chatter. And the president, this is true, the president closed the country down for one day and kicked off Iceland Hour, with a request for all people of Iceland and its friends abroad to share a story of positivity about the country. So if you know me, you know the magazines, my mission has always been to change perceptions of West Virginia through positive stories. So maybe that's why I just love this angle so much. But this is what happened. Within 1 week, they had 1.5 million positive stories. And then they did this. Why is that not? Well, maybe we won't get to play that one. All right, I don't get to, oh, come on, internet. Let's see.
I'm Gudmundur.
I'm Gudmunda.
Hi, I'm Gudmundur. Gudmundur. Here, it's 40 degrees.
This is one of the hottest restaurants in Reykjavik.
Welcome to the biggest tourist festival.
This is the most powerful hot spring in all of Europe.
I'm Gudmunda. Of Reykjavik. Gudmunda.
So this campaign that they started personalized the experience they launched Don't Just Google Us. So it was all about don't just Google us, learn our stories from real Icelanders so that your experience will be memorable, unique, and authentic. So they really kind of took on Google and said, stop doing this. And what's so really pretty cool about that is that that whole campaign took off through Google. It was one of the most Googled things on Iceland taking on Google. But, after and I guess reason why I wanted to share that was what resonates with me and with you, I hope, is that this is authentic. It's real people. You get the feel for not just the community, but you get the feel for the people and what they're doing. And they're telling stories in a unique way. And I got to say, it's on my bucket list now. I completely fell for it. Iceland, I want to go. I want to go check it out. But as I'm looking at it, I keep thinking, how do we bring West Virginia, or Appalachian syrup to the top of minds when most folks associate maple with Canada and Vermont? I kept thinking about that when we were working on that issue, on the winter issue, and trying to tell this story. I was thinking, how do we really knock it out of the ballpark? How do we do it in a creative way, and we kind of flood the ether, everything out there in the world, to say and own these products? Iceland, after this campaign, this Inspired by Iceland campaign with these series of videos, had, before they launched it, they had something like more than 80% of the hits Iceland turned up on Google were negative stories about natural disasters or financial distress. But 10 weeks after these series of videos, after Iceland Hour, close to 22 million stories of positivity on every platform possible: print, social media, YouTube, 22 million stories of positivity showed up. And, it's because Icelanders are proud of their roots and heritage. Who else do you know that is proud of your roots and your heritage? All of us in West Virginia. If Iceland can do it, so can we. So, and it made me think, when I first saw these videos, it made me think of something that we launched in our company on West Virginia's birthday. I close the office and I send everybody out to a place in West Virginia they've never traveled to before. And we have to document it on social media and we share it out. And it's just kind of that way to try to flood social media with positive stories about West Virginia. And I think about what you're doing with Maple Days. Maple Days, that's what's really inspiring. Look how much it's grown from year to year, and it just keeps getting bigger and better. So as we let that kind of percolate, and then as we kind of go on, I've got 10 things that I wanted to share with you when you're thinking about how you tell your story. I'm gonna try to get past this. There we go. So 10, what I call 10 business building storytelling tips. First one is to tell your unique brand story, because every successful brand has a compelling story behind it. So you have to create an irresistible brand story. So what makes you unique? What do you have that people want to consume? This is why why we added those itineraries that I showed you in the beginning, is to tell a little bit about your story. Why is your syrup, your cotton candy different? And don't tell me that it's not. Are you the third generation to tap into, to tap the same piece of property? Have you grown from 30 taps to 30,000? Do you infuse your syrup and focus on savory uses instead of sweet? What differentiates you? What is it that you want me to take away from when I visit or I purchase your product? Because as I said before, when someone purchases your product, they are purchasing your story. That's why it's important to know it and be able to tell it. Number two, associate with a region or something that differentiates you in a way, like I was thinking, and I told Luke this back when I first learned about the authentic Appalachian brand. This is a great a brand building way to go, is to associate. You think about Switzerland, products that are made in Switzerland are kind of associated with craftsmanship and precision. In Germany, they're viewed as being reliable and well engineered. Well, it really is time for Appalachia to own this brand. What is a West Virginia brand? What does it mean? Vermont has done an amazing job of associating the region or the state in a way that differentiates them. And it could be your county, it could be your town, it could be larger. Then the third thing is, if you win an award, you use it. Enter competition so that you can win an award. It needs to be built, like if you win best tasting, best maple syrup or best maple product, build it into everything that you do, into your label, your brand, add a sticker, promote it. When your product is on a shelf, put a little tent there, give it to the folks who own stores, let them know I won this award. It will, when someone is looking at a shelf full of products of maple syrup, what's going to draw their eyes? They're looking for something to differentiate. So it's kind of, you've won a stamp of approval. Make sure you use it. Number 4, in the same vein, stand out on the shelf. You can be authentic, but that doesn't mean your brand or your label should look like it was printed on a dot matrix, printer. Your brand needs to be professional, polished, and needs to tell your story. Strong brand packaging is an important differentiator. Know what your competition looks like. Don't replicate what they're doing. Do something different, but be true to yourself. This is something we actually love to do here in the office, is help brands design logos and their packaging, because I see what a difference it makes on a daily basis. One of the 5th things I think is really important in telling good stories is to appeal to emotions. As you know, I know a lot of folks here are members of the association, but as an association, how do you appeal to new members? How do you appeal to a growing audience of new purchasers, people who associate with, people who associate the state with maple or other tree syrups? How are you appealing? How are you making that getting that emotional reaction? I see that as an important part of our responsibility and the state's responsibility is to appeal to West Virginians to support locally produced products, no matter what that locally produced product is. But we've got to educate our neighbors on it. This is why you buy local. This is why you buy the West Virginia homegrown brand. And that's part of the story. And that engages an emotional reaction in people. Maybe it's an appeal. Do you need to get more antioxidants in your life? Well, Aunt Jemima is not going to do it. So your brand can stand out by delivering an emotional experience that's associated with your product or service. One great example of this is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola started a whole campaign on emotional appeal by branding their products as happy. Everybody's happy when you drink a Coca-Cola. And they really owned that and knocked it out of the ballpark. But you could think of a lot of different products that have really honed in on marketing and emotion. Number 6, one thing, everyone wants to think about when you're telling your story is, this is what I am. But sometimes your story is what you're not. You're not fake. When we're talking about maple syrup, you aren't fake, you aren't concocted in a lab, you're not corn syrup. So sometimes, to tell your story, think about not just what am I, but what am I not? Number 7, one of the great ways to tell a story is, and this is really important to a lot of millennials, is to give back. Have you created a brand that gives back to the community? Make sure you're telling that. People really want to support those who are community minded, who give back. Maybe it's with every purchase, you're planting a tree, or maybe it's, you're dedicating time in elementary schools to teach kids about maple syrup and all the things that you can make with it. But that's an important part of your story. Number 8 is moving away from traditional kind of wisdom. You can differentiate your brand by moving away from the conventional wisdom surrounding your industry and delivering kind of the opposing viewpoint. Redefine your product use. I was thinking about this in we talk about this with some other clients, but I was thinking, how does this work with maple syrup? You're not just for breakfast. You can really own the dinner market. Here's what you do with maple syrup in some non-traditional ways. I think Lindsay has been working, and the Future Generations team, on this national maple syrup days and maple days, in fact, but that is to really kind of raise awareness about what does maple syrup, what can you do with maple syrup and why is it important. Number 9 was, a lot of times folks say, I'm just a small mom and pop, I have a limited supply. We tell folks, while it may seem counterproductive to profits, when you have limited availability of your brand, then it actually might help you sell more at higher price points. And that's through differentiation. Why is walnut syrup have a higher price tag? When customers perceive that there is a limited amount of a product, demand and perceived value can increase. As I said, I have a lot of times folks say, I'm just a small mom and pop producer. But if you are, you're part of a bigger picture and a bigger mission, one that is important to the brand of the entire state. Market that, use it. If you only have 60 bottles, you only have 60 bottles, but let that be known. Let that be a part of your story. One of the things I was thinking about, my husband is from Vermont, so we always have to go visit Ben and Jerry's. And one of the things my kids always loved to do was go to the Ben and Jerry's ice cream graveyard. But they really did this, they would run a limited edition run of something, and they would price it higher and say it's a limited edition, and they would market the bejeebers out of it. And then they go bury it, and they made a graveyard for these buried flavors, and then that became a tourist destination. So there's a way to think differently about your limited supplies. And last but not least is always to have a call to action. Tell your story and then tell your customer what you want to have happen. Have a call to action. Buy my syrup here. Visit me on this day. Let them know what you need them to do or what you want them to do. Join us as we make more maple than Vermont. Have some kind of call to action that makes people feel like they're a part of something important and bigger. When I think about Dr. Richland telling me West Virginia has more maple trees than Vermont, why are we not putting that on billboards? So why are we not calling out people? Why are you buying Canadian syrup or Vermont syrup when you can buy right here in West Virginia? So by telling good stories, your businesses and your products, your association, you can catapult not only your business, but you can catapult West Virginia into a more vibrant future. And we are here to partner with you to help you tell those stories and help be a part of that team, so that because we all win in the end. And I think that's really exciting. And that's why in our publications at New South Media, we want to tell West Virginia story, and we want to celebrate who we are and who we're becoming. So with that, I'm going to say, let's take some questions, and I'm going to go off of, stop sharing there. Did that work? On there, very good. And I want to make sure, I saw some chats, I couldn't see it while I was. Okay, doesn't West Virginia stand for West Vermont? West Vermont, that's funny. Very good. So are there questions for me? Anything you want to ask, or if we want to brainstorm some ideas or challenges that you have? All I'm seeing is no one can hear me snoring, and
Yeah,
oh, there we go.
currently don't have any in the Q&A box. Here we go. Okay. Annie has a question. For producers who are looking for a strong narrative about their business for wholesale sales channels, how is this different than direct to consumer narrative?
That's a great question. I think a wholesale channel, storytelling is always, it's going to be the same. How do you get into those wholesale, get those wholesale accounts with folks with high trafficked area that you're going to serve, that will serve you well, is you differentiate yourself. You have to say, this is my story, and this is how I tell my story. When I used to have a store at Snowshoe, we had a West Virginia Living marketplace, and when folks were trying, wanted me to sell their product, they pitched their product. And I would always want to know, one, I would look at the brand, how it looked. Was it professional, engaging? Was it polished? Did it look like, that it had been around for a while, or it was something maybe new and fresh, something like that. There were things that it had to grab me visually. And then I also wanted to know the story, because I wanted to be able to sell it to people who came in the store. So if you've had that strong narrative and you know your story, that's the story you tell all the time. It doesn't change whether you're telling a direct consumer or to your wholesale buyer. You tell that story. Thanks, Annie, and thanks for the recipes.
How is telling a story and selling a brand direct retail different than online?
How is telling a story and selling a brand direct retail different than online? I think it is easier when you are face to face with someone to be passionate, and they can feel your energy when you're pitching that. But you have to be concise, especially online. You're going to have people's attention. You don't want to lose someone's attention. You're going to have to grab them and then hold them. But you've got to be able to capture, again, what differentiates yourself very quickly. This is what you're getting when you buy my product. When you buy my product, this is what it means. How is it going? Instead of, like, a lot of folks will just say, we're the best. It's the best flavor. That doesn't tell anybody, much. What you're going to want to do when you're just online is, one, make sure it's professional. Your storefront is clean, easy to navigate. Folks understand it. You want to be, catchy, catch their attention, have good quality images. Photography is important to this. Really good, strong brand. But then have some little, you could have a little video clip or something that says, learn more about us. Here's who we are as a producer. There was another question we missed beginning, but do you know successful ecotourism maple syrup operations? Oh, and I'm going to blank on this. There's one in Vermont that my husband and we visited, and this is really interesting. They had a B&B on site, and as part of your experience there, you would go, you tap trees, you get some syrup, and you would stay, and you would work. You would get the experience of what this is like, or go in the sugar house. And this I thought was really brilliant because it worked on a lot of different levels. I was paying money and yet I was working to do it. And it makes me think, and this isn't a maple syrup operation, Diane, but when I used to be the editor of a magazine in Mississippi, and I will never forget this, I went to do a story in the Delta of Mississippi on cotton fields, and there was a place called the Shackin' Up Inn. I don't know if they're still in existence or not, but it was the Shackin' Up Inn, and it was sharecropper shacks, and people would go and rent and stay in sharecropper shacks and then pick cotton. And I remember thinking, these are the smartest people I have ever come across. They've got people, they're not having to pick their cotton, and they're getting paid to stay, they're renting these little cottages. I thought it was brilliant. So it's just kind of thinking outside the box. I'll try to think of that maple syrup operation that we stayed at in Vermont, because it was really cool. It was a neat experience.
Okay. What are the best ways to engage other businesses and the media to help you tell your story?
So this is where, having those strong partnerships, it comes into play. And one is and I tell folks this all the time, when you have a good story to tell, don't, well, how do I say this? I get 1,000 emails a week, and I am not kidding. I have 1,000 emails on average a week. It is very hard if I'm out of the office for me to even get back to some of these emails. Many of them are press releases that say, oh, here, you should come do a story on that. I will tell you, chances are I am not going to read a press release, even though everybody thinks I've got to send out a press release. Now, maybe for TV news, that'll work better. But for my type of print, where I'm working far in advance, because we shot, when we started working on Gary Mongold story, I shot it last season so that it would be for this issue. So we're working well in advance. We get a lot of people who just call or send a press release the day before something happens and expects us to be able to come, and we can't do that. So for me, I prefer, if someone's trying to engage with me, is much like what had happened with this, Luke, is someone to just say, look, let me tell you about this. I'm not sure if there's a story there, but I'm going to trust you to know that I'm just going to give you the information, and here's what we're working on. And if there's ever a story, here's my contact, and would love for you to reach out. That's how relationships start often for me. It's just that first connection of someone saying something that piques my interest. And that's important, is to know what is the thing that you want to be the takeaway from that relationship. If you're trying to, well, and I'll also say back to where I said, if you win awards, if you win something or you're competing in something, reach out to your local papers, and tell them about it. I've won this, use that, because the more that you can build those clips of things where other people have taken notice of you, it helps to keep telling more and more stories. It's kind of a snowball effect. but associations are being vocal about what you're doing and having something unique and are able to differentiate your story in some way. That will always pique, a writer's interest, or at least it should.
All right. Any other questions? Thought I'd seen somebody. I don't see it now. Okay. Thank you so much for coming tonight and joining us. That was a lot of really great information. I hope we got a lot from it. And thanks for everybody for coming. Before you take off, Kate, is there a poll?
Yes, ma'am. I'll launch it now.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. We'd love it if you would fill out the poll. Thank you. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us this evening. And big thanks to you, Nikki.
Thanks
And
for having me. Thanks.
we will see you guys next month with a new webinar. And have a good evening.